$50,000. Cash. Today. You sign right now. And we'll even throw in moving expenses. The man in the $1,000 suit stood on Lily's porch like he owned it already. His cologne so strong it probably cost more than his insulting offer. His partner, a woman with a clipboard and a smile that never reached her eyes, nodded along like this was the deal of the century. Lily Chen was 32 years old and had lived in this house her entire life. The same house where her grandmother had raised her. The same house where she'd learned to code on a second-hand laptop at the kitchen table. The same house these people were currently appraising like it was garbage they were doing her a favor to haul away. Let me get this straight, Lily said slowly, leaning against the doorframe. You want to buy my grandmother's house, the house that's been in my family for 40 years, for $50,000? Ma'am, I understand this is emotional, the suit said, his voice dripping with condescension. But let's be realistic here. This neighborhood, this property, it's not exactly prime real estate. We're being generous. Behind him, Lily could see the rest of Riverside Heights, the historically black neighborhood that had been home to teachers, nurses, small business owners, and families for generations. Houses with gardens where kids played. Porches where neighbors sat and talked. History that these developers saw as nothing more than an obstacle to their luxury condominiums. Generous, Lily repeated, her voice flat. The woman with the clipboard stepped forward, lowering her voice like she was sharing a secret. Between you and me, honey, you should take this deal. Once we start developing, property values are going to tank for anyone who doesn't sell. You'll be stuck in a construction zone for years. Noise, dust, your neighbor's gone. It won't be pleasant. That wasn't a sales pitch. That was a threat. 3 months ago, Lily had noticed the first signs. A new coffee shop opened on the corner where Mr. Patterson's barbershop had been for 30 years. Rent tripled overnight, and suddenly Mr. Patterson was gone. Then the community center her grandmother had helped found got bought out by a yoga studio that charged $25 per class. Then the letters started arriving. Platinum Development Group, fancy letterhead, same message. We're interested in purchasing your property. Please contact us to discuss this exciting opportunity. Exciting for who, exactly? Lily had thrown the first 3 letters in the trash. But they kept coming, getting more insistent, more urgent. And now these two were on her doorstep with their $50,000 and their thinly veiled threats. Thinking she was just another poor black woman in the ghetto who'd be grateful for whatever scraps they threw her way. What they didn't know, what they couldn't possibly know, was that Lily had been paying attention. She'd been watching Platinum Development Group for weeks, following their permits, their LLC filings, their corporate structure. She knew exactly who owned what, who owed whom, and where every dollar was coming from. And what these people definitely didn't know was that Lily Chen had more money in her investment portfolio than their entire company was worth. So, what do you say? The suit pressed, pulling out a contract from his briefcase. Sign today, cash tomorrow. You could be out of here before the weekend. Out of here. Like her home was a prison she needed to escape from. Lily looked at the contract, at these two people who thought they were so clever, so superior, standing on her grandmother's porch offering pocket change for something priceless. She thought about her grandmother, who'd bought this house in 1983 when banks were still redlining black neighborhoods, who'd worked double shifts as a nurse to make the mortgage payments, who'd told Lily on her deathbed, "Don't you ever let anyone make you feel small. You're bigger than they'll ever understand." I need to think about it, Lily said calmly. The suit's expression soured. Ma'am, this offer expires at 5 p.m. today. After that, we move on to other properties. And you'll be left here alone while we build around you. Then I guess I better think fast, Lily said, and closed the door in their faces. Through the window, she watched them walk back to their Mercedes, shaking their heads, probably laughing about the dumb woman who was about to miss out on their generous offer. They had no idea what was coming. No idea that while they were playing checkers, Lily had been playing chess for months. She pulled out her phone and opened her banking app. The number staring back at her made most people's eyes water. $4.7 million. 10 years of working in tech, learning to code in this very house, building apps, selling 2 startups, investing smart. Her grandmother would have been proud. But Lily wasn't going to just refuse their offer. That would be too simple, too easy. These people wanted to tear down her neighborhood, displace her community, erase history for profit, while treating the people who actually lived here like obstacles to be removed. No, Lily had a better plan. A much, much better plan. And it started with a phone call to her lawyer and 4 words that would change everything. By Platinum Development Group. If you're enjoying this story of how the underestimated became the underestimator's worst nightmare, don't forget to subscribe because what happens next will make you believe in karma. The next morning, Lily woke up to find 3 more letters shoved under her door. Not mailed. Hand-delivered. Someone from Platinum Development had walked right up to her house in the middle of the night and slipped them through the mail slot like some kind of corporate stalker. Each envelope contained the same contract, same $50,000 offer, but with a new addition, a highlighted section that hadn't been there before. Offer valid until 5 p.m. today. After this deadline, offer reduced to $30,000. They were trying to pressure her, create urgency, make her panic and sign before she had time to think. Lily took a photo of the letters and sent them to her lawyer, Marcus Reynolds, with a simple message. They're getting desperate. His response came within minutes. Good. Desperate people make mistakes. Meeting at 2 p.m.? Marcus had been her grandmother's lawyer, then became Lily's when she started making real money in tech. He was 63, black, sharp as a razor, and had grown up in Riverside Heights himself. His office was downtown now, but he'd never forgotten where he came from or the people who'd supported him on the way up. Lily spent the morning doing what she'd been doing for weeks. Research. She pulled up Platinum Development Group's financial records, the ones that were public anyway. The company had been buying properties across Riverside Heights for 8 months, always the same playbook. Low offers, artificial urgency, vague threats about construction and declining property values. What made Lily's blood boil was how surgical their approach was. They weren't just buying random houses. They were targeting elderly homeowners, single mothers, people they assumed wouldn't have the resources or knowledge to fight back. People they thought would be grateful for any offer at all. Mrs. Patterson, the widow who lived 3 houses down, had sold for $40,000 last month. Her husband's barbershop had been in the family for 3 decades, and she'd held onto the building as long as she could. Platinum bought it, gave her 30 days to move out, and immediately flipped it to a coffee chain for $300,000. The profit margin made Lily sick. She checked her watch. 1:30. Time to meet Marcus. His office was in one of those glass towers downtown that screamed money and power. When Lily walked into the conference room, Marcus was already there with 3 folders spread across the table and a smile that told her he'd found something good. Tell me you have what I think you have, Lily said, dropping into a chair. Better. Marcus slid the first folder across to her. Platinum Development Group is overextended. They've been buying properties on credit, using each purchase as collateral for the next. It's a house of cards, and they're 1 bad month away from collapse. Lily flipped through the documents. Loan agreements, lines of credit, debt obligations that added up to way more than the company was actually worth. They're broke, she said slowly. Not broke. Cash poor. All their money is tied up in property they haven't developed yet. They're betting on getting enough houses in Riverside Heights to convince the city council to approve their zoning changes. Once they have that approval, they can sell to a bigger developer and cash out. But if they don't get the zoning approval? Marcus's smile widened. Then they're sitting on a bunch of houses they overpaid for in a neighborhood they can't develop, with loans they can't service. The whole operation collapses. And how many houses do they need to hit their threshold? According to the zoning regulations, they need to control at least 60% of a city block to apply for commercial redevelopment permits. Right now, on your block, they own 8 out of 15 properties. So they need at least 1 more. They need yours, Lily. Your property is right in the middle of the block. Without it, their holdings are fragmented, and the city won't approve anything. You're not just another house to them. You're the linchpin holding their entire plan together. That explained the desperation. The overnight letters. The declining offers designed to make her panic. Lily sat back, letting this information sink in. What about buying the company? Is that actually possible? Marcus pulled out the second folder, this one thicker. Platinum Development Group is privately held, but the owner, Richard Whitmore, is the sole shareholder. If someone made him the right offer, especially someone who could close quickly with cash, he'd probably take it. The company's worth about $2 million on paper, but given their cash flow problems, I could get it for less. Probably 1.8. Maybe even 1.5 if you negotiate hard. The third folder turned out to be a full background check on Richard Whitmore himself. 56 years old, third-generation real estate developer. History of buying low-income neighborhoods and flipping them for profit. He'd done this in 3 other cities before coming to Riverside Heights. Each time, he displaced hundreds of families, made millions, and moved on without a second thought. The photos showed a man with silver hair, expensive suits, and the kind of smile that belonged on a shark. In one picture, he was shaking hands with the mayor at some charity gala, both of them grinning like they were doing the world a favor. He's done this before, Lily said quietly. 5 times, actually. And every single time, he targeted historically black neighborhoods that were quote-unquote undervalued. Translation: he exploited people who didn't have the resources to fight back. Lily thought about Mrs. Patterson, about Mr. Johnson who'd sold his house for $60,000 last week, about the families who'd been pushed out of the neighborhood they'd built, while Richard Whitmore made money hand over fist. I want to buy the company, she said. And then I want to use it to buy back every single property he stole from this neighborhood and return them to the original owners or their families. Marcus leaned back in his chair, studying her. That's not just revenge, Lily. That's justice. But it's going to cost you almost everything you have. My grandmother didn't raise me to hoard money while my community gets destroyed. She raised me to fight back. Smart. Then let's fight back smart. I'll reach out to Whitmore's attorney, set up a meeting. We'll make it look like you're just another investor interested in buying into the development game. He'll never see it coming. As Lily left Marcus's office, her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Final offer, $40,000. Sign by tonight or we're moving forward without you. Your house will be surrounded by construction for years. Hope you like noise. Platinum Development. She almost laughed. They really thought they were in control. Thought they held all the cards. Thought she was just some scared woman in the ghetto who'd crumble under pressure. What Richard Whitmore didn't know was that the scared woman he was trying to intimidate had written code that processed millions of dollars in transactions every day. Had negotiated deals with Silicon Valley investors who made him look like an amateur. Had learned from her grandmother that being underestimated was the greatest advantage anyone could have. Lily texted back, "See you soon." She didn't explain what that meant. Let him think she was caving, ready to sign whatever papers he wanted. Let him think he'd won. By the time Richard Whitmore realized who he was actually dealing with, it would be far too late. The predator was about to discover he'd been hunting something much bigger, much smarter and infinitely more dangerous than he'd ever imagined. The meeting was set for Thursday at 3 p.m. in Platinum Development's headquarters. A sterile glass office in the business district that probably cost more per month than most people in Riverside Heights made in a year. Lily dressed carefully that morning. Not her usual jeans and hoodie, but a sharp navy blazer, white blouse, and slacks that said professional without screaming, "I have millions in the bank." The goal was to look competent enough to be taken seriously as a potential investor, but not so polished that Richard Whitmore would see her as a threat. Marcus had coached her on the approach. Let him think you're interested in partnering with him. Maybe you want to learn the development game. Invest your little tech money into something stable like real estate. Stroke his ego. Make him feel like the expert teaching the student. Men like Whitmore can't resist showing off. At 2:45 p.m., Lily walked into Platinum Development's lobby. The receptionist, a young woman who looked barely out of college, glanced up from her desk with an expression that went from neutral to subtly dismissive in about half a second. "Can I help you?" The tone suggested she doubted it. "I have a meeting with Mr. Whitmore. Lily Chen." The receptionist's eyebrows rose slightly, like she was surprised Lily could afford a meeting with her boss. "One moment." She picked up the phone, whispered something Lily couldn't hear, then hung up. He'll see you now. 10th floor, corner office. The elevator ride-up gave Lily 60 seconds to center herself. She'd negotiated with venture capitalists who controlled billions. She'd pitched ideas to tech executives who could make or break startups with a single email. This was just another meeting. Just another man who thought he was smarter than her. Richard Whitmore's office was exactly what she expected. Floor-to-ceiling windows with a view of the city. Expensive artwork that probably came from some gallery opening, leather furniture that cost more than a decent used car. And behind a massive oak desk sat the man himself. He didn't stand when she entered, didn't offer a handshake, just gestured to a chair across from him like he was granting her an audience. Miss Chun, I understand you're interested in discussing your property situation. Not a discussion, a situation. Like she was a problem to be solved. Actually, Lily said, settling into the chair, I'm interested in learning about your development process. I've made some money in tech and I'm looking to diversify into real estate. Your work in Riverside Heights caught my attention. Whitmore's expression shifted from impatient to intrigued. Money always got these people's attention. Really? What kind of tech? Apps, mostly. User interface design, some back-end development. Nothing you'd have heard of, but profitable enough that I'm looking for new opportunities. It wasn't a lie. Just not the whole truth. She'd sold her last startup for $2.3 million and had been investing strategically ever since. Whitmore leaned back in his chair, fingers steepled. The picture of a man about to share his wisdom with someone he considered beneath him. Real estate development, Miss Chen, is about seeing potential where others see problems. Riverside Heights, for example. Most people look at that neighborhood and see old houses, outdated infrastructure, a community stuck in the past. And what do you see? Lily asked, keeping her voice neutral, even though every word out of his mouth made her want to walk out. Opportunity. Location is prime, 10 minutes from downtown, close to public transit. The land is valuable. The structures are not. Buy low, demolish, rebuild luxury units. Sell high. Basic economics. And the people who live there now? Whitmore waved his hand dismissively. Market forces, Miss Chen. The neighborhood is changing whether they like it or not. We're just facilitating that change. Honestly, we're doing them a favor by offering to buy their properties. Most of those houses are falling apart anyway. Lily thought about her grandmother's house, lovingly maintained for 40 years. Thought about Mrs. Patterson's home with its garden full of roses she'd been tending for 3 decades. Falling apart. The audacity. So the $50,000 you offered me, Lily said carefully. That's based on your assessment of the property's actual value. Whitmore smiled, and it was the smile of a wolf sizing up prey. That's based on what I'm willing to pay in a neighborhood. That's about to become very unpleasant for anyone who doesn't sell. Construction, noise, dust, displaced neighbors. Your quality of life will deteriorate significantly. $50,000 is more than fair for what you'll be dealing with. There it was. The threat wrapped in business speak. Do what I want or suffer the consequences. I see. Lily pulled out her phone, pretending to check something. And if someone wanted to invest in platinum development directly, say, become a partner in the company? Now she had his full attention. Whitmore sat forward, eyes sharp with interest. That would depend on the investment amount. We're always open to capital infusion from the right partners. How much would someone need to invest to have significant influence in company decisions? Significant influence? We'd be talking about a substantial stake. Minimum $1 million for a meaningful partnership. Lily pretended to consider this, letting the silence stretch. She could see Whitmore's mind working, probably calculating how much he could extract from this naive tech worker who thought she could play in the big leagues. I'd need to see the company's financials before making any decisions, she said finally. Of course! Whitmore pulled a folder from his desk, the movement too smooth, too practiced. He'd had this ready. These are our projected earnings based on the Riverside Heights development. Once we secure the remaining properties and get zoning approval, we're looking at $15 million in profit conservatively. Lily flipped through the projections. They were aggressive, assuming everything went perfectly, and none of the displaced families fought back. The numbers also didn't match what Marcus had found. These were fantasy projections designed to lure in investors. Impressive, she said, closing the folder. I'll need some time to review these with my financial advisor. Take your time. But I should mention, we're closing on several more properties this week. The opportunity to get in on the ground floor won't last long. Translation: sign over your house and your money before you figure out this is all smoke and mirrors. Lily stood, extending her hand. This time Whitmore shook it, his grip firm and possessive, like he was already counting her among his conquests. Thank you for your time, Mr. Whitmore. This has been very educational. Happy to help, Miss Chun. And about your property, the offer stands until tomorrow. After that, I can't guarantee anything. As Lily rode the elevator down, she pulled out her phone and texted Marcus. He's worse than we thought. Completely delusional about the company's value. This is going to be easier than expected. Marcus replied immediately. Good. I have someone on the inside at Platinum, assistant controller. She's been watching Whitmore cook the books for months and she's ready to talk. Can you meet tonight? That evening, Lily found herself in a coffee shop 3 blocks from Platinum's office. Sitting across from a nervous woman in her early 40s named Jennifer Park, she was Korean-American, impeccably dressed, and looked like she hadn't slept well in months. I've worked for Richard Whitmore for 3 years, Jennifer said quietly, stirring her coffee without drinking it. I've watched him destroy 5 neighborhoods, displace hundreds of families, all while telling himself he's some kind of economic hero. I'm done being part of it. Why now? Lily asked. Last week, an elderly black woman came into the office. Her name was Ruth Patterson. She'd sold her property to Whitmore for $40,000, and she just found out he flipped it for $300,000. She was crying, asking if there was any way to undo the sale. Whitmore had his assistant escort her out like she was trash. Lily's jaw tightened. Mrs. Patterson's mother-in-law. She'd heard about this. He laughed after she left, Jennifer continued, her voice shaking with anger. Made some joke about how these people don't understand business. That's when I decided I was done. She pulled a flash drive from her purse and slid it across the table. Everything's on here. Real financial statements, not the garbage he shows investors. Proof he's been inflating property values and loan applications. Evidence of the threats his people have been making to homeowners who won't sell. Everything you need to bury him. Lily pocketed the flash drive. This could cost you your job. I know. But I can't keep working for someone who treats people like obstacles to profit. My parents immigrated here with nothing. They worked in a laundromat for 20 years to give me opportunities. I didn't get an accounting degree to help rich men steal from poor families. That night, Lily and Marcus went through every file on Jennifer's flash drive. Bank statements showing Platinum Development was 3 months away from insolvency. Emails where Whitmore instructed his team to apply pressure to hold out sellers. Text messages discussing how to work around fair housing laws. But the real prize was the company valuation. According to Jennifer's actual accounting, Platinum Development Group was worth $1.2 million. Maybe less when you factored in all the debt. Whitmore had been telling investors it was worth $5 million. We can get this company for $1 million flat, Marcus said, leaning back in his chair. Maybe even less if we time it right. When's the right time? 2 weeks. That's when his biggest loan payment is due. $500,000 he doesn't have. If we approach him then, cash offer, quick close. He'll take it just to avoid defaulting. Lily looked at the files spread across Marcus's conference table. Evidence of fraud, predatory practices, lies stacked on top of lies. Richard Whitmore had built his empire on the backs of people he considered beneath him, and now that empire was about to crumble. Let's do it, she said. And once we own the company, we're returning every single property to the original sellers at the price he paid them. Marcus smiled. That's going to cost you everything you have, you know. Money comes back. Community doesn't. 2 weeks later, on the same day Whitmore's loan payment was due, Marcus called with 4 words that made Lily's heart race. He's ready to meet. The meeting took place in the same conference room where Lily had first met Whitmore 3 weeks ago. But this time, the dynamic was completely different. Marcus sat beside her, briefcase open, documents neatly stacked. Across the table, Richard Whitmore looked like a man who hadn't slept in days. His usually perfect silver hair was slightly disheveled, his tie loosened, his jaw tight with tension. Next to him sat his attorney Donald Chen, no relation to Lily despite the shared last name. He looked even more stressed than his client. "Thank you for meeting on short notice," Whitmore began, trying to maintain his usual confident tone but failing. "I understand you're still interested in investing in Platinum Development." "Not investing," Lily said calmly. "Buying." The word hung in the air like a bomb waiting to explode. Whitmore blinked. "I'm sorry, what?" "I want to buy Platinum Development Group, the entire company. Full acquisition, all assets, all liabilities." Lily slid a document across the table. "I'm prepared to offer $1 million cash, closing within 7 days." Whitmore's face went through several colors: confusion, disbelief, then red-hot anger. "You want to buy my company for $1 million? This company is worth 5 times that. According to what numbers?" Marcus asked smoothly, pulling out his own folder. "Because according to your actual financial statements, the ones your controller provided us, Platinum Development Group is worth approximately $1. $2 million. And that's being generous given your current debt obligations." Whitmore's attorney went pale. "Where did you get internal financial documents?" "Jennifer Park," Lily said. "Your assistant controller who got tired of watching you commit fraud. She gave us everything, Richard. Real balance sheets, inflated property valuations you used to secure loans, emails instructing your team to threaten homeowners who wouldn't sell." Marcus pulled out printouts, sliding them across the table one by one like dealing cards. "Here's you telling investors the company is worth $5 million. Here's the actual accounting showing it's worth a quarter of that. Here's you inflating property values by 300% in loan applications. That's bank fraud, by the way. Here's an email chain," Lily continued, her voice steady and cold, "where you instruct your acquisition team to tell Mrs. Patterson that construction would make her neighborhood unlivable if she didn't sell. That's coercion and possibly elder abuse." Whitmore's hands were shaking now. "You can't prove any of this." "Actually, we can." Marcus produced another document. "Jennifer Park has agreed to testify. She's also provided recordings of conversations where you explicitly discussed manipulating property values and targeting vulnerable homeowners. You recorded your own team meetings, Richard. Very thorough of you." The attorney was frantically flipping through the documents, his face growing paler with each page. "Richard, we need to talk, privately." "No." Whitmore's voice was sharp, desperate. "This is extortion. You're trying to steal my company. We're offering you a lifeline," Lily said. "In case you forgot, you have a $500,000 loan payment due today. Right now, actually. It's 3:47 p.m., and the payment was due at 3 o'clock. You're already in default." Whitmore's eyes widened. He grabbed his phone, checked something, and his face went white. "Your bank has already been notified," Marcus continued. "They're probably calling you right now. Once they start the default process, your other creditors will follow. Cascade effect. By tomorrow morning, you'll be drowning in collection notices and lawsuits." As if on cue, Whitmore's phone started buzzing. He looked at the screen and silenced it, but they could all see the bank's name on the caller ID. "Unless," Lily said, letting the word stretch, "you accept our offer. $1 million, cash, wire transfer today. We take over all company assets and all liabilities, including that loan payment. You walk away with enough money to start over somewhere else, and you avoid the fraud charges we're prepared to file." "Fraud charges?" Whitmore's voice cracked. Marcus pulled out another folder, this one thicker. "We've compiled everything into a formal complaint for the FBI's Financial Crimes Division. Bank fraud, wire fraud, predatory lending violations, fair housing violations. Jennifer is willing to testify. So are 3 of your former employees who watched you operate. We have victims ready to give statements, including Mrs. Ruth Patterson, whose mother-in-law you defrauded out of $260,000 in property value. We file this complaint," Lily added, "and you're not just losing your company. You're looking at federal prison time. 5 to 10 years, maybe more depending on how many charges stick." The room fell silent except for Whitmore's phone, which kept buzzing with ignored calls. His attorney leaned over, whispered urgently in his ear. Whitmore shook his head, whispered back. The attorney's expression grew more insistent. They went back and forth for almost a minute before Whitmore finally slumped in his chair, defeated. "This is insane," he said quietly. "That company is my life's work." "Your life's work," Lily said, her voice hard now, "is destroying communities and displacing families for profit. Your life's work is looking at neighborhoods like Riverside Heights and seeing nothing but dollar signs. Your life's work is treating people like obstacles. That woman you had escorted out of your office last month, Ruth Patterson? She's my neighbor. The house you offered me $50,000 for? My grandmother bought it in 1983 for $30,000 and spent 40 years turning it into a home. You looked at it and saw garbage. I look at it and see everything she built for our family." Whitmore's jaw clenched. "So this is about revenge?" "No, this is about justice." "There's a difference." Marcus placed a pen on top of the purchase agreement. "You have two choices, Richard. Sign this. Take the $1 million and walk away. Or refuse, go into default, face the fraud charges, and lose everything anyway, except you'll be doing it from a prison cell." For a long moment, Whitmore just stared at the document. Then at Lily. His eyes were filled with hatred, disbelief, and something else. The dawning realization that he'd been completely, utterly outplayed. "How?" he asked finally. "How does some tech worker have $1 million cash?" Lily smiled, and it wasn't kind. "Some tech worker? Richard, I've built and sold 2 companies. My net worth is $4.7 million. You looked at me and saw some poor girl from the ghetto who should be grateful for your scraps. You never bothered to actually find out who you were dealing with. That was your first mistake." She leaned forward. "Your second mistake was thinking the people in Riverside Heights were too poor, too uneducated, too powerless to fight back. You targeted my community because you thought we were easy money. But my grandmother taught me something before she died. Being underestimated is a weapon. And you just handed me that weapon." Whitmore's hand trembled as he picked up the pen. His attorney nodded, resigned. For 30 seconds, the only sound was the scratching of pen on paper as Richard Whitmore signed away everything he'd built. When he finished, Marcus immediately collected the documents, had Whitmore's attorney witness them, and sent a photo to the title company and bank. "Wire transfer will hit your account within the hour," he said. "Congratulations, you're no longer in default." Whitmore stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. "I hope you choke on it. That company, those properties, that neighborhood. It's all worthless without someone who knows how to develop it properly." "I'm not developing it," Lily said calmly. "I'm returning every single property to the original owners at the price you paid them. Mrs. Patterson gets her mother-in-law's house back. Mr. Johnson gets his house back. Every family you displace gets a chance to come home." The look on Whitmore's face was worth more than the $1 million she'd just spent. Pure shock, morphing into rage, then into something like despair as he realized what she was actually doing. "You're destroying $1 million company to give away houses? I'm investing $1 million to restore a community you tried to erase. My grandmother always said the best investment isn't the one that makes you the most money. It's the one that does the most good." Whitmore opened his mouth, closed it, then turned and walked out without another word. His attorney followed, clutching his briefcase like a shield. When the door closed, Marcus let out a long breath. "I've been practicing law for 35 years. That was the most satisfying deal I've ever closed." Lily looked at the signed documents, at the company she now owned, and thought about what came next. If you're watching this story unfold and thinking karma works in mysterious ways, hit that subscribe button because the restoration of Riverside Heights is just beginning. 6 months later, Lily stood on Mrs. Patterson's freshly painted porch, watching the older woman cry tears of joy as she held the deed to her late husband's barbershop building. "I never thought I'd see this place again," Mrs. Patterson whispered, touching the brick wall like she was greeting an old friend. "When I sold it, I felt like I betrayed Jerome's memory. Like I'd given up the last piece of him." "You didn't give up anything," Lily said gently. "It was stolen from you. I'm just returning what's yours." Over the past 6 months, Lily had systematically dismantled everything Richard Whitmore built, using Platinum Development's own resources. She'd contacted every person Whitmore had bought property from in Riverside Heights. 12 families total. Some had moved across the state. Others were living with relatives, unable to afford rent anywhere else after being displaced. The offer was simple: come back home. Same house, or if it had been demolished, Lily would rebuild it to their specifications. The deed would be transferred back to them for exactly what Whitmore had paid. Sometimes even less. No profit, no interest, no strings attached. Mr. Johnson, who'd sold his house for $60,000, broke down sobbing when Lily handed him the keys to his rebuilt home. My grandkids were born in that house, he'd said. I thought they'd never see it again. The Rodriguez family, who'd been pressured into selling for $75,000, moved back in last month. Their teenage daughter had cried when she saw her old bedroom recreated exactly as she'd left it, down to the purple walls she'd painted in 8th grade. Not everyone could come back. Some had found new lives elsewhere, new jobs, new communities. But 8 of the 12 families returned, and Riverside Heights slowly began to feel like itself again. The financial cost was staggering. Between buying the company for $1 million, returning properties at purchase price, and rebuilding demolished homes, Lily had spent $3.2 million. Her savings account, once comfortably in the millions, now held $287,000. Marcus had asked her 3 times if she was sure about this. You're making yourself nearly broke to give away property, he'd said. You understand that, right? I understand that my grandmother worked herself to exhaustion so I could have opportunities, Lily had replied. Using those opportunities to help rebuild the community that raised me isn't charity. It's gratitude. The 4 properties Platinum still owned, the ones whose original sellers couldn't be located or didn't want to return, Lily converted into community spaces. One became a youth center with free after-school programs. Another became a community garden where neighbors could grow vegetables and gather. The third housed a small business incubator offering free space and mentorship to local entrepreneurs. The 4th property she kept for herself, transforming it into a tech education center where she taught coding classes to kids from the neighborhood. Every Saturday morning, 15 teenagers crammed into the renovated house, learning the same skills that had changed Lily's life. My grandmother learned nursing in a community college that gave her a scholarship, Lily told her students on the first day of class. I learned coding in my grandmother's kitchen on a secondhand laptop. None of us get where we're going alone. We climb on the shoulders of people who invested in us, and then we reach back and pull others up. As for Richard Whitmore, his fall from grace was swift and brutal. Within weeks of losing Platinum Development, 3 of his former investors filed lawsuits claiming fraud. The FBI opened an investigation into his business practices. 2 banks that had extended him lines of credit called in their loans simultaneously. He tried to start over, launching a new development company in Charlotte. But Jennifer Park's testimony had been made public in court filings, and the story of how he targeted vulnerable communities spread through real estate circles. Investors wouldn't touch him. Banks denied his applications. The Charlotte project collapsed before it began. Last Lily heard, Whitmore was working as a consultant for a small property management firm, making a fraction of what he'd once earned, living in a rented apartment instead of the mansion he'd lost in the lawsuits. Some people might call that karma. Lily called it consequences. The city took notice of what was happening in Riverside Heights. The mayor, the same one who'd smiled next to Whitmore at charity galas, suddenly wanted to meet with Lily. He showed up at the ribbon cutting for the youth center with cameras in tow, talking about community investment and preserving neighborhood character. Lily let him have his photo op, but when he tried to take credit for the restoration, she shut him down publicly. Mr. Mayor, she said into the microphone. With news cameras recording, where were you when Richard Whitmore was displacing families? Where were you when elderly homeowners were being pressured into selling their homes for pennies on the dollar? Where was the city's investment then? The mayor's smile faltered. Lily continued. This community didn't get saved by government programs or corporate charity. It got saved because people who grew up here refused to let it die. Because my grandmother taught me that you protect what you love, and you fight for people who can't fight for themselves. That's the real investment this neighborhood needed, The speech went viral. Local news picked it up, then national outlets. Suddenly, Lily was being invited to speak at community forums, real estate conferences, and city council meetings about gentrification and predatory development practices. She used every platform to tell the same story. Communities aren't obstacles to profit. They're living ecosystems built over generations by people who deserve respect, dignity, and protection from those who see them as nothing more than opportunities for exploitation. 1 year after buying Platinum Development, Lily sold the company shell to a non-profit affordable housing organization for $1. They would use it to continue protecting Riverside Heights and other vulnerable neighborhoods from predatory developers. Her bank account was lean now, nothing like the cushion she'd once had. But her calendar was full of consulting gigs, speaking engagements, and contract coding work that paid well enough to cover expenses. Money she'd learned was renewable. Community wasn't. On the anniversary of the day she'd closed the door on Whitmore's insulting $50,000 offer, Lily sat on her grandmother's porch with a cup of coffee, watching kids play in the street, listening to neighbors call greetings to each other, breathing in the smell of Mrs. Patterson's roses blooming in the garden 3 houses down. Marcus called. "The Rodriguez family wants to throw you a thank you party. I told them you'd say no, but they're insisting. Tell them I'll come if it's potluck and they don't make a big fuss. Lily, you gave them their home back. They're going to make a fuss." She smiled. "Then I guess I better bring my grandmother's peach cobbler recipe." That evening, surrounded by families who'd returned home, eating food and sharing stories and watching kids run around yards they'd thought they'd lost forever, Lily felt something she hadn't felt in a long time. Complete peace. Mr. Johnson pulled her aside, his eyes wet. "Your grandmother would be so proud of you, baby girl." "You know that?" "I hope so. I tried to do what she would have done." "No," he said firmly. "Your grandmother was strong. But what you did, that took something beyond strength. That took vision. That took believing that doing right matters more than getting rich." Not many people your age understand that. Lily thought about Richard Whitmore, probably sitting in his rental apartment somewhere, bitter about losing his empire. She thought about the $1 million she'd spent, the savings she'd depleted, the comfortable future she'd traded for this moment right here. "My grandmother used to say that the best revenge isn't destroying the person who hurt you," Lily said quietly. "It's building something so beautiful, so strong, so meaningful that it makes their whole existence irrelevant by comparison." She looked around at Riverside Heights, alive again, thriving again, protected again. Whitmore spent his whole life chasing money and stepping on people to get it. And where did it get him? Nowhere that matters. But this? She gestured at the family's gathering, the community healing, the neighborhood restored. This is legacy. This is what lasts. The sun set over Riverside Heights, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold, and Lily Chun, the granddaughter of an immigrant nurse, the girl who learned to code in her grandmother's kitchen, the woman who'd traded millions for meaning, smiled. Because in the end, the best investment anyone can make isn't in property or profit. It's in people, in community, in the courage to fight back when the world tells you you're not supposed to win. And sometimes, just sometimes, the underestimated become the unstoppable.